Hello, I'm Alma Schneider. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mother of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
And I am Iris Miller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and the proud mother of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising children with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new.
This is 2 Moms, No Fluff. Hello, everyone, and welcome to, I was about to say Take Back the Kitchen. Welcome to 2 Moms, No Fluff. I'm Alma Schneider, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Iris Miller, and we are really excited about a very special guest that we have today for our episode. Iris, would you like to give a little intro to our guest?
Yes, I'm very, very excited to introduce to you all Kathy Shields, who's a writer who writes about parenting, disabilities, and self-discovery. She's a retired educator with a Master's of Science in Exceptional Education. And Kathy, if it's okay with you, I'll let you introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay, thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you so much. Yes, as you said, Iris and Alma, I'm a retired kindergarten teacher. I taught for 25 years until I retired. And once I retired from my job, I went ahead and started working on my lifelong goal of writing a book about my daughter who has a disability. She had moved into a group home when she was 28, and that was 12 years earlier. And so I started writing the book and realizing that there was a book there. It started when I was teaching in my class. In the afternoons, I would write little blurbs about stuff, but then it morphed into something else. And then the next thing I knew, I was creating a book. And then it took a lot, maybe 7 or 8 more years to finally get a publisher to agree to publish it. And here I am now.
And I want you had mentioned something to us when we first met about the fact that you had sent this to how many publishers who rejected it, and then you got the one that heard you and saw you.
I sent it to 100. Well, I started out with agents because that's what writers do. They query agents. So I queried about the first 50. Then I realized I had to get an editor to help me with it. And I think I went through 3 or 4 editors until I finally found the last one that helped it push it over the edge. And what happened was after the first editor I had, I think I queried another 20 or 30 people, and that made 80. And then I was still getting rejections. And by the time I got up to about 150, I contacted the last editor. She was amazing. She had written a book about having a baby that had passed away right after birth, had complications. And so she understood the subject. She really got it. And then after that, I had 10 offers for 10 requests for the full. That means they want to read your whole manuscript. And then I had, I think 2 or 3 offers to actually publish my book. And I took the one with Vinely's Press. And that was 180. Altogether, I had 180 queries.
And I wanted everybody to hear that. People who have something to say, you're going to get a lot of rejections, but I love the fact that you really stuck with it because you knew that this was a topic that was going to be important. All right, well, let's rewind. I want to ask you, so if you're comfortable letting us know your daughter's diagnosis and what it was like when you first learned that she had this diagnosis, this disability.
Look, my daughter Jessica is a twin. And so when they were born, everything was fine. She had a little bit of oxygen deprivation. This is 1983. So they didn't seem to, the neonatologist didn't come running in and saying there was a problem. They gave her the oxygen and then they said, okay, she's fine. The other baby was very jaundiced. They were more worried about her, ironically. But as they grew, the months went by, one twin was doing a lot more than the other one. And that was a little bit of a sign, but the pediatrician said, twins develop at different rates. I accepted that. But by the time she was 2, she was a lot really developmentally delayed. She was meeting her milestones just under the radar, like you're supposed to walk by the time you're 20 months. She walked at 19 months. You're supposed to talk and make noises by a certain age, and she would do it, but not really well. So he sent me to a neurologist at 2 years old. I went to the neurologist, and the neurologist told me that my daughter had cerebral palsy. It was mild, but it was cerebral palsy, and that was the first shock. And he didn't say anything about being developmental, intellectually disabled. He just said basically she has cerebral palsy. And when I called back a few days later to say, are you saying she does, or did you think she does? Because he didn't make it like definitive. She has cerebral palsy. And he said, oh, you're quick. That's what the doctor quipped when I called back. And he goes, I go, what do you mean I'm quick? He goes, most parents take a year before they call back and ask what's really happening. He said, they don't really accept it. Then, so we enrolled her in all kinds of therapy. She went to an early intervention program, and she was tested there to get into the program, and she qualified under physical disability. But they also did a battery of tests. They gave her an IQ test, and her IQ was borderline normal. That's what they called it then.
Okay.
I think that was the term they used. And so she was 3 years old, and she was in a special education program with the other kids. Some of them were in wheelchairs, some of them, everybody had different varying exceptionalities. And that was pre-K. But when the time for her to go to kindergarten came along, they did another test. They were going to place her in the kindergarten position program. And so they tested her to find out, well, what's her IQ? And it came back, her IQ was like 50, maybe it was 40. And it was, then they said, I don't think they said it was profoundly retarded, but they said way below what she had tested at 3. And they said, well, this is a different kind of test. And I kind of didn't believe them. And they were going to put me in these programs, and they were saying, go look at this program. And all the programs I looked at in public school were like horrifying. The kids were just sitting there like drooling. And that's not my daughter. So I went to a hospital, a children's hospital here in Miami, and said, I want a psychological evaluation. I want you to help us, because I didn't believe that this was real. And when I got there, they had all her testing, all her records, and the doctor, I think it was a psychologist, met with us. We don't have to do testing. We don't have to test her. You've already had all these tests. What's happening is you're not accepting what's real. What's happening is your daughter's profoundly retarded. That's the word he used in 1986. I think it was 86. And I was like, that's not right. We came here for you to help us, to give us some, answers and give us some solutions. What can we do to fix?
And some hope, maybe. And some hope.
Yeah.
And kind words.
Yeah. He said, well, you need counseling. You're not accepting this. And we see parents like this all the time. Their children are adorable. They're either autistic, or they're this or they're that, and they just can't take it. He goes, we see that. And a lot of times these children are physically very, very attractive, and your child's very, very attractive, but you're not getting the whole story. We're going to give you the truth. And I just shut down. I couldn't believe it. I said, no. And I was really angry. And, I think it was the thing that made me write my book was the denial. It went on for years. I was going to fix her. I was going to send her to all the therapies, everything I could think of. And I did. I sent her to a lot of different programs. She had physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. And I was going to make this be a kid who was going to be completely like her sister, normal. Everything's going to be just fine after we get through this. And I think it took till around the age of 12 or 13. That's a long time. But to really say, I get it. I'm trying to change her, but it's me who needs to change. And that she's not broken. Nothing's wrong. This is who she is. It was my attitudes about it. And I realized that. And then I started accepting. And I did everything I could, though, up to that point. And I still do. But at that point, my attitude shifted, and I became more aware that I was just pushing against what was real. What was really happening was she had brain damage from the oxygen deprivation, and that's what caused the cerebral palsy, and that's what caused some of the brain damage of her to affect her intelligence.
Before we get to the next question, can I just ask you, related to this, how do you think your life would have, or your dealings with your daughter, with Jessica, how would it have played out had you been told some of these things in a much more compassionate way? Do you think it would make a difference? Because I'm hearing it as something that was not compassionate, the way that you were told. Um, do you ever think about that?
Um, so the psychologist encouraged us to get therapy, but
Mhm.
it didn't. Yeah, I think he could have like explained, this is really important that you do get therapy, or that you understand, maybe a better explanation. It was
Mhm.
sort of like, you've got all this testing, these are the results, and too bad. I mean, accept it. Basically, they were saying, accept it. What happens if you can't accept it? What happens if you're
Exactly.
struggling? And
Exactly.
I think that would have helped. I don't know how it would look in today's world in
Mhm.
2023,
Mhm.
because
Your
this is
doctor
all.
would have been sued, FYI,
Yeah,
in today's 2023.
yeah. I think it could have been a little. It would. I mean, I still would have been upset. Maybe probably still been in denial, because my idea was, I'm going to have this perfect life with my 3 children.
Yeah, but saying that, okay, you can have a great life with a child who is different, just saying like it's okay, as
That
opposed
would
to
have
you're
helped.
in denial, because that saying that you're in denial, we just had another interview, a guest on who said, once someone says you're in denial, there's no discussion of anything, because they can just say, oh, she's not accepting anything, she's in denial. And so anyway, I just wanted to do that. Iris, you wanted to ask something? I know.
Yeah, I just I'm listening to this and my ears are burning just because of the
Yeah.
description of the medical professionals and how they really can do such a better job in explaining the situation, in working
Yeah.
with the parents and showing compassion and a bit
Mhm.
more of an optimistic view for the family, for the parents. It's just painful to hear your story, as the stories of many other parents, and this, although has improved a bit, is still an issue. There is a big gap between the medical professional and their maybe need of facts, and the parents' need for compassion and a pathway to move forward
Mhm.
in unfamiliar
Mhm.
journey. So,
Mhm.
Kathy, if it's okay with you, do you mind sharing a little bit of the early years until your daughter became a teen? How was it for you as a mother and for her as a child?
Um, I think it was, well, it was challenging, because then I went from having one child to having 3. I had twins, and that was challenging. And in the beginning, when they were babies, Jessica, the child who had the problems, would do certain things would happen. She'd throw up. I'd be spoon feeding her the baby food, and she'd vomit because she had trouble swallowing, which I didn't know that yet, that she was having this trouble. Um, Man, but it was fun because they were so cute. They were little and they were cute. And I would, okay, this is what this baby's doing. My first child had a lot of colic, and so did this child. So I was like, well, that's similar. So it was fun. And then as I went into preschool with her, and her twin was going to a different school at that point, because I started enrolling her in special programs. And I wasn't sure if I should mainstream. Like, I was encouraged to do that, but it seemed like she had more needs. And if I were going to get her to be normal, then she needed to have these special programs. And so they were separated. And that was like a lot of negotiating strategies. How am I going to get from this school to that school to that school? There were 3 different schools. So that was hard. And then she would frustrate me because she couldn't really speak very well. And I think when she was 3.5, she broke her arm, and she still wasn't speaking very well at all, garbled, but she blurted out, my arm. And that's how I knew her wrist was broken, took her to the hospital. So it was like there was hope there, but it was so frustrating and difficult to figure out, what does she need? What do I do?
Yeah. And scary,
Yeah, it was really hard.
sounds,
And then it would make me angry. I wanted to be this perfect mom,
yeah,
do everything I could. And the other twin was kind of getting ignored. And
yeah.
she even says that even
Mhm.
as an adult now, she said, well, you had to take care of my sister. But
Sure.
So it was guilt, a lot of guilt,
Yeah.
and frustration and anger. And I would get angry a lot at her
Mhm.
and realize that I have no business getting angry at her, but that was my emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And I was a stay-at-home mom for a lot of years, until they
Mhm.
were like 8. And then they were all enrolled in programs. So I was decided to go back to work as a preschool teacher. But
Mhm.
my husband helped some, but he had a full-time job and he had a lot of demands. So
Yeah.
and I was raised as a woman who's you're supposed to stay home and take care of the kids. And that
Mhm.
was my idea of what you're supposed to do. But
Mhm. Well, I really, but we both appreciate your honesty, expressing, the anger at not being able to be the mom that you want to do, that your daughter wasn't being the daughter that you had, expected. A lot of people keep that, they don't admit to the anger, and anger is a real piece of this. It has to do with fear also, but we get angry, we get frustrated. And your anger, I'm sure, helped with you becoming so vocal about it and an activist. And we want to know, when did that shift come where you felt like, because I imagine that your writing has to do with sharing your story to help other people, which is a form of activism and just making it known. So when did you, if you can pinpoint it or just a general sense, when did you start feeling like, I'm going to share this for myself and for other people? Is there do you have an idea about that,
probably
when
when
it
she was a
shifted?
teenager, when she was around when she was a teenager. Um, and it was becoming more and more obvious that she was different. She wouldn't speak
Uh-huh.
like everyone else spoke. And I'd get the looks from people, like we'd go to McDonald's and people would, what's wrong with you as a parent?
Yeah.
And then my other 2 daughters would go, you can't, and I wrote about this in other articles, that they can't talk to you like this. But I was not willing to verbalize, well, yeah, you're right. They can't talk to me. Like, I would just kind of uh, retreat, you know,
Yeah.
like shy. I don't want to talk. I don't want to address this. And I don't even want to deal with it anyway. So why should I
Yeah,
face
and it was
other
none of
people?
their business, I imagine you felt.
Yeah. So I think
Person.
around the age of when she was like 16, 15, 16, and I really was getting the idea that this is what I've got, and and I started writing about it more and more. And then, like you said, the book was, she was the catalyst for the whole book. I
Mhm.
mean, that not pain, but that angst I was feeling all that time doing all this. It had to have an outlet, and my
Yes.
outlet became the writing. And then the writing became, I see how the world looks at her. And
Mhm.
even though um, she doesn't look physically disabled, but when
Yes.
she speaks, that she sounds different. But
Right.
physically, she doesn't look disabled. She looks, um, like everyone else. And I've had a few friends say things like, look at our kids, they look normal. And I don't think that's fair, but
No.
uh, I have to say that I probably thought that too. Like,
Mhm.
kind of, I'm proud that me too. And I'm ashamed of that. But
Well, it helps. I mean, I think that the reality is that it actually helps in a lot of ways, but in other ways, it doesn't help, as you know, because when you have an invisible disability, it is harder for people to, well, if somebody has Down syndrome and has physical features, people know automatically, oh, that's why they might be talking that way. People, project all sorts of things onto the mother typically if there are things that seem awry if they look typical. And it's a tough place to be. But yeah, the shame is, I think, thank you for being so candid about that. It's something that I think a lot of us feel, that, thank God they're cute, or thank God they're,
uh-huh.
because it helps, it helps if somebody's cute or attractive. So
Right. It helped me,
very
and it
complicated.
maybe helped her, but didn't help everyone else and all her peers that she was going to school with. And yeah, I feel like, as I look back and I've grown from this experience, I am ashamed of it. But I think I had a lot of ableist attitudes
Right.
that I had to challenge. And even
Mhm.
now, once in a while, I'll write something, and my older daughter is like kind of like my editor, and she'll go,
Yeah.
"You sound like an ableist. Don't write that." And I'll go, "Yeah, it's there." And I have to, like, censor myself.
Yes. Or acknowledge it, that this is what
Yeah.
society has the society created. All of the ableist thinking we have is from society. So
Oh, I blame my mother. So
don't blame your mom. See, society, blame society for what your mom did. But anyway, all right,
well,
Iris, you want to say something?
No, it's funny to me. It's like it always goes back to us moms, no matter what we do. So
she had an idea of, she was like the only Jewish family in this little town in Arkansas, little town in
Wow.
Arkansas. And
Wow.
she was born in the 1920s. So I think that shaped her and
Yeah.
affected her view of the world. And she
Yes.
never went back there. When we were little kids, we never went and visited the family that still lived in Arkansas. I think she was a little ashamed of it herself. And she had these ideas of, you have to look a certain way, you have to be ladylike, and everything had to be like, she didn't even really like me. She didn't like, I had curly hair. She didn't like that. She was like, I didn't look like the ads on TV in the 1950s.
Right.
So that's why I don't blame her, but in a way,
that's where she took you from, that you had to repair.
Not her fault.
Yeah.
It's a sad thing that for many of us, we still have family members that, even being seen with our kids with disabilities is a painful thing for the family members. So it's just hard sometimes, A, to do things as a family for many parents. B, it's hard to get support from those family members, and C, it just aggravates all of those looks, reflections that we get from society in general about our kids. It's almost being multiplied in our own homes because of family members that have that point of view about disability and the part that it takes or shouldn't take in life. And we all want to be always looked at as, our kids are just a normal part of society, and disability is a normal part of life, and we all will be disabled at one point or another in our life. But the reality is that we have the rejection coming from within so many times, and it's very, very hard. So I wanted to ask you, Kathy, if you can share a little bit about the teenage years and transition to adulthood. How was that process for your family? How was that process for you personally, if you can share?
Okay. So when Jessica was approaching 18, I remember I didn't know anything about what I was supposed to do next. I would just I would talk to other parents mostly. That was the biggest help. Talking to them, what are you doing? What are you doing as far as planning this? And she was able to go to high school until she was 21. And I had her in a public school, and then I moved her back to Easter Seals, and she graduated from there, which was great, at 21, in a culinary arts training program. They were going to train her to work in a school cafeteria. It didn't end up happening that way, but she liked it. Teenage years. Well, I had to deal with her becoming, a young woman and starting her menstrual cycles. And she is not someone who is coordinated about taking really good care of themselves. Sometimes I'll have to go back and make sure she washed all the shampoo out of her hair, and so think about that time of the month. That was hard. Or sometimes she would, have trouble cleaning up after herself after the bathroom. And that was the case, from early on. So it wasn't like, oh, this is a big deal, but it became a big deal when she started having her periods. Then she did something funny. This is in my book. We went to Disney World with her. I took her to Disney World, and my brother and his wife wanted me to come meet them there. And she was getting really tired, and the wife was going, oh, just take her to one more ride, one more thing. And Jessica was tired. So we had rented a wheelchair because she can walk, but she was getting tired. So she was really dragging, and it was like time to go. Probably 3 hours earlier, should have left. So my sister-in-law said, let's go to one more ride. And Jessica stands up. Can I say this on your podcast?
Please.
She puts her hands on the handles and pushes herself up out of the wheelchair and stands up and goes, "Fuck you, mommy." And everyone, it was like a big circle of people, like everybody backed up, and it was like the spotlight was on us. That's my most memorable experience of her being like a 16-year-old. And she has dribbles all over her shirt because she's messy, and it was that. And then she kept saying she was sorry. She knew she shouldn't do that, but what was she going to say?
You have to laugh or else you'll cry.
Mommy wasn't listening, and I listened. I took her home. But so then in the point, so I was visited by somebody from the Department of Children and Families. I don't know. I guess the school helped me set that up. It was sort of like I was in a bubble. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just flying by the seat of my pants. What next? What next? What next? And he said, well, we can get her in on Medicaid, Medicare, med waiver. She had got the med waiver, and he set it up. He was very, very helpful. Sign this, sign that. And somehow when she was 21 and nowhere to go after age 21, there was a program called CHC, which is now called the WOW Center in Miami. And they had an opening. And they didn't generally have openings. So they had an opening, and I got her in, and she went straight there. Instead of having to stay home and me figuring out what am I going to do with her all day long, she didn't have to stay home. She went there, and it's an adult day training program. So she got into that right away. And that's when I started thinking about what's next? Here she is, 21. What are we going to do? She couldn't really be left alone. When she was left alone one time, she tried to teach her how to use the phone, and then she ended up calling 911 accidentally.
Why is that every person's go-to? 911. How about like information that you say 411? Why does it always have to be 911?
Well, I had told her to she couldn't hit all the numbers because she's not real coordinated. So she couldn't hit all the 7 numbers. So I said, just hit *9.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she hit 9, 9, 9, and then 1 and 1. And that's how she messed up. And the police came, and I realized I could never leave her home alone. And that's when I started thinking about group home. And then I started thinking about what's the future. I mean, am I always going to have someone have to watch her? And I also had to think about what happens if she's on her own, or I'm not here, or my husband's not here. And I had to think about what's going to happen with her if she was sexually assaulted. And that was another theme that I had to deal with. We hired,
which is a very real thing that a lot of people don't talk about. The very high percentage of girls who have disabilities and sexual assault, and it's a really scary thing to think about.
So I ended up finding, I talked to other friends. What are they going to do? And we talked about the different kinds of birth control, but what if somebody stops or forgets to give the birth control? Or I wanted to do something permanent. And I asked her, and I talked to her about it, and she said she didn't want to have any babies. We ended up finding a doctor who was willing to do it. And I went to the lawyer, and I got a healthcare surrogate. I became her healthcare surrogate. And we took her to the doctor, and we said, okay, she couldn't really even given her the gynecologist couldn't really even give her a physical exam because Jessica didn't want her putting her hands in there. So she said, don't worry, I'll do it. I'll do the surgery, and we'll do it when I'm looking at her. And when I got to the hospital, I had my papers, and I turned everything in. I got registered, but the day of the surgery, they didn't have the papers. And they said, no, nothing's here. I said, but I turned everything in. So somehow it got lost. The doctor comes strolling in, and she said, well, Jessica, do you want any babies? And Jessica said no. And so then they were able to do the surgery.
Okay. You're not her legal guardian?
I'm not her. And I was doing it before I became her legal guardian because, that's the other thing. Should I become her legal guardian or not? Right. And I wanted to do it before she was 21, before I had to go and apply to be her legal guardian, if I decided to do that, which I didn't yet. Because it seems the lawyer said, you don't have to do it. She doesn't have any money, and leave it the way it is right now. But I had her healthcare surrogate, whatever, I'm her surrogate. And she was able to say yes or no. And she didn't have guardianship. She could make up her mind. And she was over 18. I think she was 20 and a half. And so we did do that. And it's controversial, but I think I made I think I made the best choice for me and my daughter.
Mhm. Yeah.
For her. And she was the one who said yes to the
Yes,
doctor.
of
Well, I
course.
didn't have to, you know, it wasn't, I'm doing something awful to you. I'm making sure
Yeah.
this is, you know, and then in today's world with the abortion, what would happen if I hadn't
Yeah.
done that and something did happen to her? I just can't imagine. So
Mhm.
that was
Yeah.
their growing up years.
Well, thank you for, again, for being so candid, because this is so helpful to people who are going through all of this, to be open about it. We all need to have communication about all these, difficult things. Um, a lot of our listeners have younger kids, but a lot of them have older kids, and we really want to address, her going into a group home and what that was like for you making that decision. So you talked about, okay, the safety aspect of it, how you were afraid she would get, assaulted, or you were afraid that, you couldn't leave her alone. There was a danger there. But emotionally, what was that like to make that decision?
I think
To
that was
do
the
that.
hardest thing I've ever done. Maybe
Mhm.
because my other two kids are grown up, they're going to college. One of them was getting married. Jessica was 28 when she moved into the group home. So
Okay.
she's been there, she's turning 40 this year. So she's been there 12 years.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I moved her in with another friend, had a daughter that it had similar needs, and we were going to do this together.
Mhm.
And it was great, but and we looked at different group homes, and then we spent a couple of years, we kept looking, and then it was way too expensive. One place wanted, I think, $5,000 a month plus the Social Security. It was very, very
Wow.
nice. It was a
Yeah.
residential home in a beautiful neighborhood, but I didn't know it was that expensive. So I didn't know how we were going to ever maintain that for the
Yeah.
rest of our life.
Yeah.
So we put it on hold for a while, and then we found another friend had moved her son to somewhere in Chicago and Illinois. State of
Mhm.
Illinois had taken over her son's care, but when she went to visit him, everything was dirty. He was sick. No one was
Mm.
addressing his needs. And she moved him back here to Miami. And then she found a wonderful place, and she told us about it. She said, go look. So we went to look and decided to move our daughters in together. And it was hard, but I had the partner, and that
Right.
was wonderful, having a partner to do it with. And
Huge.
unfortunately, it wasn't the right fit for her. And even though I think she had great intentions to keep her daughter there, things were just not exactly the way she wanted it, or for whatever
Mhm.
reason. And she moved her daughter back home. And then what was I supposed to do? I was like frantic. Now what?
Mhm.
My daughter's there. There's a couple of people, and the workers kept changing. And they were just basically beginning this group home. It was all girls. They had another group home. This was their second one.
Mhm.
But the staff was switching a little. There were some disruptions, but somehow Jessica, my daughter, did it.
She did it.
She did it. I mean, I kept thinking she's going to ask me to move home too, because her friend did. That's what I was mostly afraid of the whole
Yeah.
time. She's going to say,
Mhm.
I want to come home too. So-and-so came home,
Yeah.
I
And
went
after all those years of working to find an appropriate place, I mean, I can't even imagine,
and I don't blame my friend, though she might think like I do, I don't. It was just, what am I going to do with my kid, and how am I
Right.
going to maintain this and move ahead without her? But we
Mhm.
did it. She bonded with one of the people that worked there, one of the workers, and
Mhm.
started calling her other mommy. And it was just a natural transition. Jessica
Mhm.
didn't, she didn't question it, and she'd come home every weekend. So we would go, you're going to stay there during the week, and you're going to go to your adult day training program, keep going there. And she has
Mhm.
special transportation services, and then come home. I'll pick her up on Saturday morning or Friday afternoon, and then I'd bring her back on Sunday night. And so we had a routine, and
Mhm.
and she seemed to like that. She seemed to accept that. Maybe some other kid wouldn't, but my kid did. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Yay.
After 28 years of being so vigilant, it must be such a relief, to know that she's safe and taken care of.
Yeah, there's been little things that have happened, but
Mhm.
nothing major. I mean,
Mhm.
nothing. She got COVID last year.
Mhm.
and people have moved their children in and out for different reasons, various reasons. Not everybody stays in the group home,
Right.
and some people move to other group homes, but I've been at the same one for all these years, and I'm pretty happy with it. But it's not ideal. It's not mommy and daddy. It's not
Right.
perfect. But
Mhm.
is she going to have that when we're gone? So
Exactly.
I'm looking at the future, like,
Mhm.
you know, her future, our future. And I don't want to burden her sisters. And a lot of people have their kids stay home, and then the siblings take care of the child person until they're gone. But I thought they could do this and do it the way I'm doing it. Bring her home on the weekend, visit her, and then send her back.
Right. And for some people, it's not a quote unquote burden. For some people, it's a companion. It's there might not be the required vigilance that maybe your daughter had or that other people have with their children. For some people, it's not a burden, but for some people, I think there is a lot of judgment about, oh, why did you send her off? There are a lot of reasons, and I think we really want to open the communication about that, because there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of judgment, and I've read that and I know for a fact, just from talking to people, that when people do keep their children home and they pass away, then they have to go immediately into a group home. It is traumatic. It is how much nicer to be able to have that transition with your parents and your family members being around to help you ease into that transition, as opposed to all of a sudden when they're 50 or 60 years old, they have to change their entire life. There are a lot of things to consider. So again, thank you for your honesty. It's really helpful, I think, to a lot of people to hear these situations.
And I'm glad you pointed out about the judgment, because I know a lot of people whose children do live at home, and
Yes.
they've never said anything to me like, why is she still there? Or made me feel bad about it, but I sense it.
Yes. Yeah.
I sense it, like, oh, you did
Yeah.
that, but
You kicked her out, kind of thing.
yeah. And sometimes I wonder,
You
did I
didn't
do the
try
right
hard
thing?
enough.
Is
You
this,
didn't try hard enough. You didn't, work hard enough. You could have made it work. It's not their business. It's an individual decision with individual circumstances.
And
Iris, I'm sorry.
one more thing that is very important from this story is that not everyone stayed. People also need to accept the fact that you can try it out. And if it
Yes.
doesn't work for your child, for your family, you can pull them out. It's not like a permanent, irrevocable decision. And this is the beauty of it, that families can try it out and see if it works for them or not, and change their minds. And I'm happy for you that being that it was, as you said, the most difficult decision you made in your life, that it did work out and it was successful both for your family and for Jessica. And I wanted to ask you as the next question, what is it that you wished, you wish now that you would have known back then, that when you were making that decision that was so emotionally difficult? Is there anything that if you could go back to yourself back then and share that information, what would it be?
I wish I had had more people tell me that it was going to be okay. And I think I was a little harsh on my friend when she moved her daughter out, like almost like a child going, well, you promised,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're in this together. I can
Yeah.
totally understand that feeling.
And I respected that she had to do what she had to do, but
Right.
how hard it was for me, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
because
it
she
would
might
have
have
been
been home.
easier if like 4 or 5 of us had moved in together and then
Yeah.
one moved out. That's what I wish I could have had happen, that a group of us were together doing this. And I hear some of the families are trying to create a Casa Familia, a group behind her adult day training program. They're trying to build something, and maybe my friend will move her daughter in there. But that's what I wish I had had then. I didn't have that then. And I thought it was better to move her early than wait till in the 40s, 50s. And that's how old some of these people are now. They're in their mid 40s and they've lived home all their lives. And I wish somebody would have said, don't feel guilty that I'm not kicking her out.
Right.
And there was a big element of, I can't do it because I'm tired of her and I'm kicking her out. And
Yeah.
I do feel that way sometimes. Like
Sure.
at the end of the weekend, when she's been home all weekend, sometimes I'm like, I'm ready for her to go back. And then I feel bad about that. But I wish
Yeah.
somebody had said it's normal to feel that.
Parenthood is all about the ebb and flow of guilt, whether you have a child with a disability or not. And I think that that's always important to remember. We're always second guessing our decisions, but we know in our gut what is best overall. That doesn't mean it's perfect, like you said before. It's not a perfect situation. It's not ideal. And I just want to comment that in our February 2023 newsletter, where we have your article, we have this wonderful article that you wrote about what it's like on the weekends when your daughter comes home and how you're like, okay, time to go back because it's enough. And you did this for 28 years every single day. And now it's just the weekend. So I'm actually glad to hear that you are willing to admit that, and that, because that's a reality. We all have conflicted feelings, but the reality is it's hard for you, and it's exhausting, and it's nice, we're all getting older, and it's nice to have some free time, which is what we had hoped for when we had children, that they would take off. So in a way, it's a very natural progression for a child. It's the most natural thing in the world for a child to leave and go somewhere else, not to stay at home. That's the abnormal, I don't want to say abnormal, but that's not the typical situation that we hope and expect for our kids. We want them to be as independent as possible, but safe and cared for. Sorry, Iris, did you want to add
No,
something?
it's such an interesting conversation. And Kathy, I just want to again salute you for the honesty in which you are sharing all of those, aspects of the decision making and the whole experience. I think that we need more people, and I'm so happy that you're writing all of this. We can all also go back to your book later on and read this, because it's an important thing, hearing it from another mom who went through this.
And your book is basically your journey through this whole experience that you share different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really
It
look
is. It starts and ends kind of in the same place, and I think I summed it up perfectly with what I've written, and I've included my other two daughters' stories. They said it was okay to use their names. They even said, I'm writing another article right now about them, about writing the story, because Jessica said to me the other day, I'm gonna write a story about you.
Oh, good.
I said, okay, well, you're right, but I love you. That was the story.
Oh, that's great.
So-
Well, is there anything else that you want to share with our community here? Words of wisdom, positivity, some hope, I don't know.
No, I think that we covered almost everything.
All right, great. Well, we really look forward to sharing the link once the book is out. We will definitely be reading it. I'm looking forward to it. And maybe we'll have you back on again someday when some more writings. And we're so appreciative of you taking your time to share your journey with us. And we wish you the best with the book.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me. I really do.
Thank you.
Lovely talking to you.
You too. All right, take care. Thank you.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can hear it.